Have you ever wondered why certain events seem to repeat in your life, even when you believe you've changed? Why, despite new paths, new people, and new intentions, the same pattern always returns, wearing different faces but carrying the same essence? Maybe it's not coincidence. Maybe you're not living a new life. You're reliving a repeated timeline. This video didn't reach you by chance. Nothing reaches an awakened consciousness by chance. There's a vibrational reason behind every synchronicity, and if these words find you now, it's because your soul has already recognized that it's ready to understand one of the oldest and most hidden codes of the universe. The mystery of timelines and why you keep reliving the same realities. The ancient Egyptians called Thoth the Lord of Time. He was the scribe of the gods, the keeper of universal wisdom, and the architect of creation's laws. In the emerald tablets attributed to him, one teaching has echoed through the ages. Time is the illusion of senses moving through eternity. Modern physics, surprisingly, now says the same, in different terms. Einstein described time not as a line, but as a flexible fabric that bends under the influence of energy and observation. That means time doesn't pass, it manifests. What Thoth once spoke symbolically, science now describes mathematically. Consciousness is the axis around which time organizes itself. In other words, you are not inside time. Time is inside you. And each time you observe reality with the same thoughts, emotions, and memories, the universe rearranges its particles in the exact same way, making you relive the same experience in new form. But this video isn't just theory, it's liberation. Throughout this journey, you will understand how unconscious observation recreates the past, how the human brain is programmed to repeat the familiar, and how you can consciously choose a new timeline. You'll learn to recognize the vibrational loops that keep you trapped in old frequencies, and how to dissolve them through awareness and emotional coherence. So if something inside you is asking for a real shift, not just external, but vibrational, stay with me until the end. And before we go further, subscribe now. Not just to follow new content, but because each like, comment, and subscription helps expand this collective field of consciousness. When you interact here, you're not just watching, you're participating in a movement that unites science, spirit, and purpose in one pulse of conscious creation. Now, quiet your mind for a moment. Take a deep breath. What you're about to hear may forever change how you perceive time and yourself. Quantum physics has already proven that we live in a field of infinite possibilities. Everything that exists, past, present, and future, is simply a different frequency within the same energetic matrix. However, the human mind, limited by its linear perception of time, can only collapse one of these possibilities at a time. And what determines which timeline manifests? Your vibration, the energetic pattern you emit through your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs. Imagine time as a vast ocean. Each drop is a possible reality. If you always dive in the same spot, you'll always find the same scenery. That's how the human mind works. It moves along familiar routes, creating a vibrational loop, an energetic circuit where consciousness relives the same experiences until it awakens to the pattern sustaining them. Thoth called this the mirror of the soul, the vibrational reflection of all that has not yet been understood. You are not being punished by the universe. You are being invited to remember yourself. Neuroscience confirms this ancient wisdom. Our brain is a machine of repetition. About 95% of today's thoughts are the same as yesterday's. That means if you don't change your emotional and mental patterns, the brain will keep projecting the same realities because it interprets the familiar as safety. even if that familiar state is pain, scarcity, or loneliness. The brain will hold you there, because the unconscious fears the unknown more than it fears suffering. Notice that the universe doesn't respond to your conscious intentions, but to your vibrational coherence. If you say, "I want to change," but still vibrate in guilt or fear, your timeline continues to collapse from that same frequency. It's like trying to switch a radio station without changing the tuning. The sound remains the same, only with more interference. And this is where awakening begins. The moment you recognize the cycle not as punishment, but as a mirror. The mirror reflects until consciousness passes through it, and to pass through it means to observe with lucidity. This is the Hermetic principle of temporal liberation. Change doesn't occur when time passes. It occurs when perception transforms. So ask yourself, which emotions are you still observing unconsciously? On what frequency does your awareness rest while you believe you're changing? Because that is exactly where the loop begins and where it ends. From the moment we are born, consciousness undergoes a process of densification. The infinite energy that we are condenses into form, vibration, and identity. It is the moment when the one fragments into millions of temporary selves. And in that forgetting of the whole, the game of human existence begins. The learning of remembering, within time, that we were never just the body living in time. Neuroscience describes something fascinating. When a child is born, the brain doesn't clearly distinguish between self and world. Only later, as the prefrontal cortex and self-image networks develop, the mind creates the sense of separation. That separation is necessary for the experience of matter. But along with it comes forgetfulness, the symbolic cut from the field of unity. Thoth taught that the soul, when incarnating, dives into density to polish its own light. It's like a ray of sunlight passing through water. It appears divided, but it remains light. Spiritual memory isn't a mental recollection. It's a vibrational state that the brain translates as sensations, intuitions, and coincidences. When I say, remember who you are, I'm not speaking of recalling a past life, but of ceasing the forgetting. It's the moment when observation turns inward and realizes that the observer, the observed, and the act of observing are one and the same. Quantum physics calls this the unified collapse. When consciousness perceives that it is the very field generating the possibilities it experiences. And this is where real transformation happens, because as long as you believe you are only the character, you suffer the rules of the story. But when you awaken to the fact that you are the author, the script rewrites itself. That is the hidden meaning behind the ancient phrase, "Man is God in forgetfulness." Today, spiritualized neuroscience speaks of neural and cardiac coherence. When the brain and heart vibrate in harmony, perception expands. The sensation is remembrance, not of something new, but of something that has always been there. It is the return to unity consciousness. So remembering is more than intellectual understanding. It is aligning feeling, thought, and action within the same frequency as the whole. When that happens, time loses its grip. Repetition ceases because the soul no longer needs the mirror. Acting in the same frequency as the whole is more than doing good or thinking positively. It means living in vibrational coherence with what you already know yourself to be. Once you remember that you are a conscious part of the universe, every action becomes an extension of that awareness. Quantum physics describes the universe as a field of energy that responds to coherence, not to isolated intention. This means the universe doesn't hear what you say. It resonates with what you are as you say it. Coherence is the meeting point between feeling, thinking, and acting. When emotion, thought, and action vibrate in the same tone, without contradiction, you enter resonance with the unified field, and the field responds instantly. The ancient mystics called this walking with the gods. Modern neuroscience calls it neurocardiac synchrony, the state in which the heart and brain operate in harmony, emitting a more ordered magnetic field capable of influencing the environment. In that state, you don't try to create a new reality. You become the flow that creates it. Acting in the same frequency as the whole means acting without resistance, without effort. Doing what must be done with full presence, because presence is the language the universe understands. But until we reach that coherence, another force works silently, the unconscious. It is the true hidden observer behind all repetitions. You may wish to change, yet if the unconscious still vibrates in the old frequency, fear, guilt, lack, self-punishment, it will continue collapsing the same realities. The unconscious is like an invisible scriptwriter who keeps writing old scenes even when the protagonist wants a new ending. And the reason is simple. It hasn't been updated. It still believes the old self is in control. Neuroscience shows that around 90% of our daily actions are automatic, driven by emotional memories stored in the limbic system. Those memories generate electrical patterns that repeat, forming true reality circuits. When the emotion is relived, the brain believes the event is still happening and reactivates the same chemical state of the past. In other words, unconscious observation literally holds time in place. Thoth called this the prison of attention, the space where sleeping consciousness keeps recreating ancient worlds. To be free from that cycle requires more than willpower. It requires vibrational lucidity. You must observe the observer. Notice the precise moment when the mind tries to return to the familiar and choose, in that instant, to remain present. It's in that space of presence that coherence is born and the loop begins to dissolve. Acting in the frequency of the whole, then, means observing with love, because love is the most stable frequency in the universe. When you act in love, without duality, without fear, reality stops resisting and starts reflecting. Now, pause for a moment. Take a deep breath and notice what is happening inside you right now. You're not just watching a video. You're being reminded of something your soul has always known. What has been revealed so far is not a distant theory. It is the most intimate mirror of your own consciousness. We've spoken about cycles of repetition, about the unconscious that recreates time, and about the power of vibrational coherence. But there's something deeper, something few people understand. All of this is happening right now, within you. As you listen, your mind tries to understand, but it's your vibration that's absorbing it. And if you are fully present, you'll realize that the very act of listening is itself a process of energetic reprogramming. That's why this moment is sacred, not in a religious sense, but in a vibrational one, the moment when a consciousness chooses to awaken a little more. What is being shared here is unique because it unites the language of spirit and science, and I ask you to stay with me, not out of curiosity, but out of choice. The choice to remember, the choice to act in resonance with what you already know to be true. You are ready for this. That's why you've come this far. Nothing on your path is random. That's why the affirmations you leave here, in the comments or in your personal journal, are more than words. They are codes of vibration. When you write, read, and repeat consciously, you create an energetic circuit that reprograms the mind and anchors this new timeline into your field. So when I invite you to comment, it's not just to engage the video. It's to nourish the collective flow of consciousness. It's an anchoring exercise. Daily repetition turns vibration into identity. So, if you wish to seal this understanding now, write, here, or for yourself. I consciously choose the frequency that creates my world. Repeat this phrase in the coming days. aloud or in silence. Let it become the soundtrack of your vibrational field, because every time you speak it, the universe rearranges its particles around this new coherence. And gradually, everything that doesn't resonate with it begins to dissolve, naturally, effortlessly. Now breathe again, consciously. Feel the weight of your body and the lightness of your mind. You have just activated a new code. And from here on, what comes next won't just be knowledge, it will be transformation. There comes a moment on the path of consciousness when a human being awakens, but not completely. They understand that they are the creator, that reality responds to vibration, that time is a mirror of observation. Intellectually, it all makes sense. But vibrationally, something still pulls them back. This is what we call partial awakening. In that state, the mind is open, but the body still vibrates with the old identity. The quantum field responds to coherence, and until body and emotion realign with the new perception, the universe continues to reflect the old pattern, not as punishment, but through resonance. Neuroscience explains that most emotional responses do not come from rational thought, but from the limbic system, a primitive brain region built to react, not to create. So, when someone says, "I understand that I create my reality, yet nothing changes," what's happening is that cognitive understanding has not yet turned into integrated frequency. The mind knows, but the body doesn't believe yet. Thoth said, "The remembrance of the whole must be written in the blood," perhaps referring to this, the need to make knowledge a cellular experience. While the body vibrates with memories of fear, scarcity, or rejection, it emits signals that recreate the same timelines. Consciousness awakens, but the unconscious keeps dreaming. Here enters the role of spiritual memory. What you call karma or pattern is actually the vibrational echo of unintegrated experiences. These memories are not back there, they are alive, resonating in your energetic field, influencing thoughts, choices, and synchronicities. Quantum physics calls this entanglement, the energetic interconnection of particles even when separated by time and space. The soul works the same way, carrying frequencies that continue influencing the present until they are observed with awareness. Nothing you live is punishment. It is merely a frequency asking to be transmuted. And to transmute is not to fight. It is to illuminate what was unconscious. Each time you recognize a pattern and embrace it without judgment, the vibrational record dissolves. It's as if time itself releases its tension. That's why the highest practice is not to change reality. It's to remember who you are in all realities. To integrate the human and the divine, the past and the present, the body and the spirit. When that happens, the entire field reorganizes. And gradually, you realize there's nothing left to heal, only energy to be understood. To anchor this awareness, repeat silently or right now. I am the bridge between the human and the divine. Everything I embrace transforms into light. This is an affirmation of integration, a code that rewrites memories in coherence. When spoken with presence, it teaches the body to trust the whole again. Modern physics now acknowledges what the ancient masters always knew. Every reality is shaped by fields of frequency. What we call matter is simply energy condensed by vibration. When an emotion repeats, it creates a stable magnetic field, and that field begins to attract experiences that match its frequency. On the quantum level, the universe doesn't distinguish between good or bad. It only responds to coherence. If an emotion is fed with enough intensity, the quantum field recognizes it as truth. That's why feelings like guilt, fear, and anxiety don't just affect the body. They literally sustain timelines where those feelings continue to be experienced. This is what physics calls the collapse of the wave. Each time you feel something deeply, You're collapsing a vibrational reality. The problem is that most of the time, this collapse happens unconsciously. Emotion becomes the anchor point of experience, and the stronger the emotion, the denser and more repetitive the cycle becomes. Thoth taught that emotion is the fuel of time, and neuroscience confirms it. Every emotion triggers chemical releases that alter perception, shaping how we see the world. In other words, you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you vibrate. When emotion changes, perception changes. And when perception changes, the timeline shifts. But breaking a vibrational loop isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about integrating it. It's looking at fear and saying, I see you. You are part of me, but you don't define me. It's allowing energy to move again instead of imprisoning it in resistance. Emotion, when accepted, returns to movement. And movement is life. This is where many stumble on the path of awakening. They think they must eliminate pain, when in truth, they must listen to it. Pain is a vibrational portal. It exists to reveal the place where love has not yet been remembered. And here, I want to make a personal invitation. Leave in the comments what has been most difficult in your journey of conscious creation. Perhaps it's the fear of starting over, the doubt about your purpose, the struggle to keep your vibration high, or simply the exhaustion of repeating old stories. Write it. Sharing is an act of liberation. The words you record here are not just expressions. They are frequencies asking to be transformed. By naming pain, you take its power away from the unconscious and return it to the light of awareness. So, if you wish, tell me, what is still challenging in your awakening process? What still holds you to old timelines? Perhaps that simple act of sharing will be the first step to release something the universe is already ready to heal through you. Thoth once said, "He who masters his inner vision masters time." Perhaps that is the most accurate statement ever made about the power to rewrite reality. Time is not a prison. It is a response to observation. When you change the way you observe, time changes the way it responds. The code of Thoth is, in truth, a set of 3 principles, simple yet transformative, uniting science and consciousness. They don't demand blind faith. They demand full presence. These are the steps to break the cycle and consciously create a new timeline. The first principle is to neutralize the old emotion. Before any change, you must untie the energetic knot keeping the past active. Observe the pattern without guilt. Feel the emotion without escaping it. The mere act of observing without judgment already begins its dissolution. Neuroscience calls this memory reconsolidation. When you revisit a memory under a new emotional perception, the brain literally rewrites the neural record. The past stops being an enemy and becomes raw material for creation. The second principle is to generate a conscious vibration. Here, the focus shifts from the problem to the desired state. It's not about thinking positively, it's about vibrating presence. Visualize your new version, not as a distant dream, but as a reality that already exists, waiting for coherence to manifest. Emotion is the vehicle of creation. Feel gratitude as if the future had already arrived. The quantum field cannot distinguish imagination from experience. It responds to the vibration of certainty. The third principle is to sustain the new observation until reality collapses. The human mind tires quickly. The universe doesn't. Vibrational persistence is what bends time. When you hold your new frequency consistently, without returning to the old pattern, the field reorganizes matter around you. It may seem subtle at first, but everything, from synchronicities to physical shifts, begins to align. Thoth called this process transmuting lead into gold, and modern alchemy understands it not as metaphor, but as vibrational psychology, transforming density into light. And the gold of consciousness is born when observation becomes pure. If you wish to anchor this moment, close your eyes for a second, breathe, and repeat softly or silently. I sustain only what I wish to expand. This is the third affirmation of our journey, a code of vibrational stability. When you repeat it with presence, you declare to the universe, my focus is my creation. The highest timeline is not something to reach, it's something to remember. It already exists, waiting for your coherence to choose it. And when that happens, time no longer imprisons, it serves. Time does not repeat, it only responds to the consciousness that observes it. And now you know, every thought, every emotion, every act of presence is a vibrational command that shapes reality. Repetition exists only until the lesson is remembered. When consciousness awakens and says, enough, the universe responds with new possibilities. Because the universe is not an external force. It is your own mind projected on a cosmic scale. Remember what Thoth taught? He who knows himself knows the gods. And to know yourself is not to memorize spiritual truths, it is to live in coherence with them. When you move with awareness, the past dissolves like mist. Reality no longer needs to repeat it, because you have become the awakened observer. The path of transformation is not a sudden leap, but a continuous return to presence. With each day, with each thought observed in love, an old timeline fades and a new one is born. You don't need to fight the old, you only need to stop feeding it. What you sustain with attention expands. What you release with awareness returns to light. Perhaps this video has touched something inside you, a memory, a longing, a feeling of already knowing. That's your soul recognizing the truth behind the words. And if something still hurts, something still holds you, remember, pain is simply the place where love hasn't yet been fully remembered. Do not rush to be perfect. Consciousness doesn't demand speed, only presence. And presence is the only real miracle. Now take a deep breath and silently repeat, I am the observer who creates time. This is the final seal, the point of return to your creative essence. Let this phrase echo as a mantra over the coming days, until it becomes more than words, until it becomes vibration. And before we close, one final reminder. If this message resonated with you, share it. Help expand this field of consciousness, because each awakened soul illuminates hundreds of others. Leave your comment, your vibration, your testimony, not just for engagement, but because your energy is part of this collective construction. And remember, the highest timeline is not a place in the future. It is a state of being, available here and now. May you walk in peace, in lucidity, and in love until the next awakening.